Hey everyone, it's Maya Guice with part 5 of Sugarball, Behind the Book, a companion podcast series where I talk to R. Lee Procter about his new book, Sugarball, a novel of Negro League baseball. Today I talked to R. Lee about Sugarball's central conflict, when the players are offered a suitcase full of cash by Dr. Enrique Abar, a representative of Rafael Trujillo, to join a national baseball tournament in the Dominican Republic. Once there, the script quickly changes. New political realities are at the same time more fair and yet more sinister. In order to survive, the players will have to discover the real reasons they've been lured to the Dominican. The plane skids, skitters, and bumps as we float up to the dock. Before we can get off the plane, the hatch opens and a whirlwind flies in. Welcome, American gods of baseball. My name is Yulisa Perez, personal assistant to the great benefactor of the Dominican nation, Rafael Leonidas Trujillo Molina. She's a tall, slender, movie star pretty stick of dynamite dressed in tailored khaki army fatigues. A very special welcome has been prepared for you, and I will have the honor of capturing this glorious moment on film. What I want, the reason I'm here, is to give you permission to be what you are. We're baseball players, says Satchel, getting paid to do a job. No, Senior Paige, says Yulisa. Senior Gibson, Senior Satchel Paige, Senior Cool Papa Bell, all of you. You are not baseball players. You are gods. Gods, ascending from the heavens to assist us here in the Dominican Republic so that we can achieve our destiny. A destiny that can be described in a single word: victory. She looks straight at Josh as she says, stand tall. Embrace your destiny. Let my camera see the fierce pride that radiates from your confidence that you will achieve this victory. Drink in the adulation that is about to be heaped on you. Let my camera see the fierce pride that radiates from your confidence that you will achieve this victory. Drink in the adulation that is about to be heaped on you. Gentlemen, this is your moment. Savor it. So today I thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the other main characters in the book. I mean, we talked about Peanut, who's our protagonist, before. Okay. But Peanut has the real distinct pleasure of following around some of the finest baseball players of the day. Talk about being at the right place at the right time. And so 3 of his, buddies are Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, and Cool Papa Bell. And so I was hoping you could tell us a bit about each of these players.
Sure, I'd be delighted to. Of course, we'll start with Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige is probably the player that people who know something about baseball are likely to know, since he is probably the greatest legend of the Negro Leagues. Just an amazing guy. I mean, after probably the greatest career in Negro League baseball, at the age of 48, he became a rookie for the Cleveland Indians and was 6-2 and helped them win the pennant that year. I mean, your typical rookie of the year is 22 or 23 years old. Mm-hmm. He was 48 years old and still had it. I can't think of a single baseball player. Nolan Ryan was 46 when he retired. Satchel was 48.
When he started,
yeah. So Satchel was, he was dominant in just about every era of Negro League baseball. In the early 30s, that's when he came into prominence. He became the most prominent barnstorming pitcher of the Negro League era. That's where they really made their money. And then he was hired by the Pittsburgh Crawfords in 36, I think. That's where he joined Cool Papa Bell and Josh Gibson to have the powerhouse team of that era. And then in the 1940s, he joined the Kansas City Monarchs, which were probably the greatest Negro League team of all time, and pitched for them for like 5 or 6 years and consistently won pennants. And, he's pitching 300 games a year, and he was the highest paid baseball player in America and didn't play Major League Baseball.
Well, talk about swallowing your pride, right? Can you imagine being 48, one of the best players in the world, joining a rookie team.
Well, true. The when you say swallow your pride, too, he was very frustrated that he wasn't the one chosen to break the color line. Everybody acknowledged he was the greatest player, even though he was in his mid-late 40s then. But when Branch Rickey chose Jackie Robinson to break the color line, Satchel was greatly vexed by that. But so that was in 47. In 1948, Bill Veeck, who was the owner of the Cleveland Indians, who was a wonderfully irreverent owner, hired Paige and a guy named Larry Doby to play for the Cleveland Indians, and they helped the Indians finally get over the top and win the pennant and then win the World Series.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, and another big player is, of course, Josh Gibson.
Josh Gibson, I think, he's sort of the hero of the book. He is, the word for Josh Gibson is mythic. He's like the Paul Bunyan of Negro League baseball. I mean, he is almost universally acknowledged as the black Babe Ruth, but a lot of people think that Babe Ruth should be the white Josh Gibson. Recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, Major League Baseball has chosen to accept statistics from the Negro Leagues as they basically say the Negro Leagues should be acknowledged as a major league. Therefore, the statistics should be accepted by Major League Baseball. And when you look at Josh Gibson's statistics, Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs. Josh Gibson hit more than 800 home runs. The greatest, I think, batting average in history was Ty Cobb, and I think it was like 366. Josh Gibson's lifetime career average is like 378. But the thing that when you start like getting into the history of Josh Gibson, the thing that just astonishes everyone is he not only hit a lot of home runs, he is generally acknowledged to be the only player ever to hit a home run out of Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium has this famous, the bleachers are kind of a two-tiered thing with a piece of lattice work at the top. Mickey Mantle came within 10 feet of hitting a ball out, and Babe Ruth came within the same thing. Josh Gibson hit a ball out of, we're talking a baseball that travels 650 feet. And every park he played in, he did that. Everybody we talked to who saw Josh Gibson play will automatically tell you some story about how he hit a ball that traveled so far that nobody could believe it. Buck O'Neill, who was one of the stars of the Ken Burns baseball series, who was a great witness to many great things of the Negro Leagues, said that there was a quality that only happened twice in his life, where somebody at bat would hit a ball so hard that the crack of the bat had a fundamentally different sound. One of them was Babe Ruth, and the other was Josh Gibson. It was like a thunderclap. And the other thing to know about Josh Gibson is a bit sad, which is that he was this great player, couldn't play in the majors. In 1942, he ended up in the hospital, and the doctors told him he had a brain tumor, but he refused to let them operate on him because he thought they was going to turn him into a vegetable. So he continued to play 3 more years with this brain tumor and still was hitting home runs and hitting over 300 and doing all this great stuff. But eventually he had to quit in 1945, and he died in 1947 at the age of 35, 3 months before Jackie Robinson broke the color line. He was 35. He did all that amazing stuff, 800 home runs, and died, and quit playing when he was 33 and died when he was 35.
That's pretty extraordinary. It also really speaks to the importance of histories, both the written and oral, right? Like how we know this about Josh Gibson, right?
True.
In an era where, a lot of this wasn't being tracked. And
that's true. And there's a long record of white players and some owners who talked about Josh Gibson. Calvin Griffith, the owner of the Senators, who shows up in the book, said Josh Gibson, hit more balls out of Griffith Stadium than the entire National League during the entire season. And there's a lot of players on record saying something like, if they accepted African American players into Major League Baseball, the owners wouldn't have enough money to pay Josh Gibson. He's just so far ahead of anybody. And the fact that he never got a chance to play is just tragic.
Yeah, I mean, saying that Satchel Paige, is the highest paid professional baseball player says a lot, considering he was probably stiffed out of half of his winnings.
That's true.
So he was really making a premium.
I know. Famously, he would usually in the later days of his career, he would insist on being paid in cash before the game.
Oh yeah.
So that's out of bitter experience.
Yeah, and I mean you've drawn a few parallels between baseball and music for a lot of the black musicians who were touring at the time. But I've met a couple older musicians who were playing at a time when they would also get stiffed, and so a lot of them do like to play. They'll request payment ahead of the gig. But then sometimes they'll wait off stage right before the gig and demand, actually, they want twice as much. So if you want us to go out, you're going to pay us twice as much. And it's because they've just been screwed so many times. But last but certainly not least, Cool Papa Bell, who's the peacemaker of the three.
Yeah, Cool Papa Bell in the book is kind of the voice of reason. And he was everybody. There's a new bio came out on him, the first one ever written about 2 years ago, and basically said he was this kind, gentle soul. After he retired from baseball, he became a coach. He was famous for mentoring players. A lot of players, who made it in Major League Baseball, said Cool Papa taught me not only how to play, how to steal bases, how to slide without injuring myself, but how to carry myself, how to be in the game with some dignity and, what to do in critical situations. Cool Papa Bell was 34 years old in 1937 when the story takes place. And he was still the fastest guy in baseball. He was, I'm sure that when you mention Cool Papa Bell, everybody talks about the fact that Satchel Paige, when somebody asked him how fast was Cool Papa Bell, and he said, and he roomed with Cool Papa Bell, and he said, Cool Papa Bell at night could turn out the lights and be under the covers before it got dark. He was famous for getting a bunt single, stealing second, stealing third, and then either stealing home or getting home on a sacrifice. So he could turn a single into a run. A lot of people say he was the fastest. On a typical outfield single, he hit the ball to the outfield, the guy fields it and throws it in. He could get to second base, which is extraordinary. I can't think of another player who could do that. So. And
we see both Josh and Satchel Paige experience transformations throughout the course of the story. They change. We see Josh sort of go from being more of a sidekick to a leader. We see Satchel Paige move from being this sort of money-focused, self-centered individual to someone that really understands that it is about the team.
That's true. Those are yes. Books are all about characters changing. What's the change? Peanut changes from somebody who idolizes Gus Greenlee and thinks about money to understanding the importance of integrity in being in life. Josh is tested where his life is on the line and he has to think about more than himself because he promised Peanut's mother that he would take care of him. And there comes a circumstance where he is faced with a life and death situation, and he discovers about himself that he can muster the courage and the fortitude to do the right thing in any circumstance, even when his own life isn't assured. So, and Satchel also undergoes a major change where he does the wrong thing, and he understands that there's a consequence to that, and the fact that he was forgiven by his teammates causes him to, I think, go forward with a different attitude about how he's going to lead his life.
Got a second chance.
Yeah, he did. And not sure I'd go down that other road again, because now he could see the consequences of what he'd done. So he became a better person.
And can you tell us a little bit about how these players would tour during the off season? They would oftentimes play against these white all-stars.
Sure. There's this was quite a popular thing. This began in the late 1930s. Dizzy Dean approached Satchel Paige and says, "You know something? What we ought to do is that you'll get a team of African-American all-stars. I'll get a team of white all-stars, and then we'll barnstorm around for like a month and a half after the season." This became wildly popular. Dizzy Dean made more money in the month and a half barnstorming than he did during the regular season, and he was a star player. Then in the 1940s, Bob Feller, the famous fireballing pitcher for the Cleveland Indians, approached Paige with the same proposition, and they did the same thing. Major League Baseball hated this idea. They did everything possible to shut it down, but they couldn't legally do anything, so they passed some cockamamie rule saying that there was a window of 6 weeks after the season where they could do it, blah, blah, blah. But, and Feller got rich doing that. So, here's another statistic. In those games, the African-American teams won, I think, 360 of those games, and the white teams won like 240 or something like that. So the black, now it could be argued that the black players had more to prove, but they dominated those series.
And I mean, whatever the reason is, right? It might be that you have something to prove. If you're winning games, you're winning games. So
yeah. Well, there's
whatever it is.
The white owners wouldn't let black players play, and the stupid reason they used as, well, we're not actually banning black players from playing. They're just not up to our standards. They just don't measure up to, and so the black players were basically saying, "Oh yeah, well, and why are we beating the white players consistently?" It was all the white owners knew it was nonsense.
Yeah, the target's always moving.
yeah. The reason keeps changing.
One other thing I want to ask you about today, and something you touched on earlier, is baseball's inevitable integration. As you mentioned, Branch Rickey integrated the game in 1947.
That's right. Famously, back in when Branch Rickey was just starting out, he was I believe he was an educator, and he was working at a college, and he coached the college team. And the college team he was coaching had one African-American player. And they were playing another team, and the other team refused to take the field if the African-American player played. And Rickey was, of course, horrified by this, and he went back to the locker room, and the player was like clawing at his own skin. And he said, "If only I didn't have this black skin." This was like around 1903 or something like that. And Rickey never forgot that. And, he's a righteous guy. He made it his business that he was going to integrate baseball. And he did it. His campaign took about 5 years. Like, he sent his scouts out to scout every Negro League team to find exactly the right player. You had to find a player with a lot of talent, somebody who's young enough to have a career, and somebody who is very intelligent and also had the emotional makeup to be able to take all the abuse that the fans were going to give him.
Yeah, the emotional stamina is in a way more important than the physical stamina.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true. So eventually he finds Jackie Robinson. Recently he was playing for the Kansas City Monarchs. There's a whole story about how Rickey tests him and can he accept all this abuse, and sends him for a year in 1946 to the Montreal Royals, And Robinson's a sensation. Hits .360, leads the Royals to the minor league World Series wins. And then Ricky brings him up. And here's one of my favorite parts of that story. So Ricky is the only guy who has like probably 100 or more scouting reports than all these black players. Now, many owners would have said, boy, what a bonanza. I've got all this information. Nobody else has it. I can have all these great players to myself. Ricky sends all of this data to all of the other owners because he said this experiment isn't going to work if only the Brooklyn Dodgers have good African-American players. So here it is. It's free. Go out and get these guys. Put them on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And, that made all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the other part of that story that's kind of poignant is that the general feeling was that if a team put an African-American player on the field, no white fans would ever show up again. And, of course, what happened is Robinson played, and the Brooklyn Dodgers had the greatest attendance season of their lives, and Robinson was a huge, huge draw at the gate everywhere he went. Mm-hmm. So, everything they thought was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw this happen in music. You've told me the story about how I believe it was John Hammond convinced his brother-in-law, Benny Goodman, to hire Teddy Wilson to play piano in his big band.
That's right. This was like 1938, and the same stuff was going on. People said, well, if once you put a black player on your team, you're never going to get another booking in the South. All your national radio contracts will be canceled. You'll never get another hotel booking. And Goodman was a little freaked out by this, but Hammond, who is famously a righteous guy, he's the guy that discovered Count Basie, discovered Billie Holiday, said, you got to do it because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And he did, and nobody cared.
Yeah, nobody
Except
cared.
The band got better.
Yeah. Sugarball, Behind the Book, is produced and edited by Matthew Solari and hosted by myself, Maya Guice. This episode's version of Take Me Out to the Ball Game was arranged and performed by E. Jammy Jams. You can find Sugarball, a novel of Negro League baseball, everywhere books are available. To learn more about our league, visit richlyspun.com.